I remember at the time, the Premier coming out once, this second court decision had been rendered, Christy Clark saying, and I remember feeling like it was such an offhanded comment, but it didn't make sense to me because she simply said something to the effect of, we just have to get this in front of another judge. And I know as a layperson, I'm thinking it kind of sounds like she's judge shopping for a judge who will agree with the government.
Well, that's certainly what they hope. I mean, that's what they're going to say. And they're going to say all kinds of things about why this judge is in error. But Jill, I can't emphasize enough. All anybody has to do is pick up that ruling, and it's actually pretty easy reading once you get into it, at least I think so, and go through it, and chapter and verse, the examples of bad faith. It's not just the confidential materials that have not been released to the public or weren't supposed to be released to the public. It's not just the claim of goading into a strike. Over and over and over again, she goes through a litany of examples of where the government really never intended to negotiate in good faith with the union at all. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to get past that ruling. And it really does, in my view, cast a completely different light on the nature of the negotiations that are going on now. And I think that the credibility of the government is certainly in question here.
All right. So in your legal opinion, what does the government have to do here?
They've got a very tough job because a great deal of this decision was based on the judge's findings of fact, which are not normally reviewable on appeal. There are very technical issues here. They appear to be trying to relitigate the constitutional argument, but that was litigated in the first instance, and they never appealed it. There's a technical aspect of this, which is that there are two court rulings. But the original finding that the government had violated the constitutional rights of the teachers was never appealed. And now in their appellate factum, they appear to be trying to reinvigorate that argument. I don't think the court is going to have a lot of time for this.
All right. So if you were giving legal advice to the BCTF, what would you tell them?
Well, my advice would be you're in a really, really strong position now, but you do have some risk. I mean, there isn't a party here that doesn't have risk, and given the strength of this judgment, the risk on either side is actually very high. But I would be advising them to make the most of this ruling and get that language out. My goodness, I mean, it's been months and months since anybody's read that court decision, but it should be out there and people should be seeing. And it does, again, it raises the issue about the credibility and good faith of the government at this stage. I'm sorry to say that, but it's hard to read that judgment and not think that.
Okay, but the government will tell you, and I wonder if this is a legitimate excuse, if you will, or answer, that they simply can't afford what that language would provide for, which is potentially thousands more teachers.
Well, but they seem to be able to afford the tax cuts. You know, what's affordable and what's not affordable, this is a lot of times about values, and we have had significant tax cuts. And it is the role of the government to balance things out. Education should be, in my view, the highest priority, virtually the highest priority, it and healthcare. But I'm on the side of education, actually, on this one. And there's very little that I don't really know how you can make the claim that it's unaffordable. You know, they could afford a new roof on BC Place. They seem to be able to find the money for projects that they want. And this is a core value, and parents are suffering. I think the big issue here is that talks seem to have completely broken down. There is no trust between these parties, and I don't see an end in sight. And I really do think that it's time for a neutral third party to come in and arbitrate this.
All right, former Crown Prosecutor Sandy Garassino, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Thanks so much, Jill.